Podcast Alien Meditation, Episode 4. Welcome to the Alien Meditation Podcast, the program where we teach you to connect with your stellar ancestors and empower your spirit with the Andean philosophy. I am Prieto, shamanic facilitator, instructor, and founder of the international school Alien Meditation. Access alienmeditation.com to find content and courses that will help in your spiritual growth and your training in holistic therapies. Do not idealize people or depend spiritually on anyone. On today's program, I want to talk about an experience that happened to me yesterday, and that was very disturbing to me. Yesterday, while I was sliding my finger across the screen of my cell phone to see what was on YouTube, I saw a video from a Spanish channel called Las Igualadas, which had a thumbnail of a man that I knew who is an acclaimed Hare Krishna guru. So when I saw the thumbnail of the video, I couldn't believe it. The title of the video mentioned the sexual abuses that this man had committed. And when I say that I couldn't believe it, it's because in his community, everyone has the impression that he is similar to a god. In past episode, I already spoke a little about my childhood, my adolescence, and my experiences and first approaches to the spiritual world. I was a person with many questions in the spiritual area, that they had no answers that I could find in the prevailing religions of my society, such as the Catholic or the evangelical ones. It was impossible, for example, to talk about astral travel or mediunic experiences with a Catholic priest or with an evangelical church pastor. Although the astral travel experience was something that I lived in my own flesh when I was 17 years old, it was impossible for me to share those experiences with other people, and they could not think that I was crazy or using drugs. I participated in some events where there were people who practiced shamanism, but those people were a bit inaccessible because they lived far away from my city and did not openly disclose the shamanic events that were going to take place. Because of this, I had very few experiences with them. 15 years ago, there was no Wi-Fi or smartphones in lower middle-class families like mine was. And to access the internet, we had to go to the places where they sold internet connection by minutes. At that time, it was very difficult to find information. Nowadays, if you want to know anything about astral travel or metaphysical subjects, you can find many blogs, many YouTube videos, where you can satisfy your questions. But 15 years ago, it was not possible. Then, as in the Catholic religion, there was not much openness to talk about these issues, much less in the evangelical churches. The only place I knew where I could talk more or less about such subjects was with the Hare Krishnas. So I decided to join that religion when I was 17 years old. That religion has some principles, such as reciting a mantra where supposedly the sound of the mantra will make you expand your consciousness and earn points in your favor for the day of your death to be closer to God. It is a mantra where you have to recite with an object similar to what Catholics know as bead, which is called yapamala. And that yapamala contains 108 beads for you to recite the mantra using each of the beads. And once the cycle of 108 accounts is finished, you have to repeat a new cycle, and a new cycle, and then a new cycle throughout the day. And perform all that from 4 o'clock in the morning. Another of its principles is that you cannot have sex outside the marriage, and even for married couples, it's only allowed to have sex with the only objective of conceiving a child. From the beginning, that religion seemed very strict to me, but since it was the only thing that was a little more open compared to Catholics or evangelicals at that time, I decided to join that religion, to see if I could more or less satisfy all my thirst of knowledge and find answers to the questions I had. The leading guru of that religion was a German man, and he gave me the impression that he was a very correct person in his way of acting. I honestly saw him as that, as a correct and civilized man. However, the others around me saw him as a god on earth and worshipped him as such. One thing that was very prevalent in that religion was the pyramidal structure, where generally the men were at the top of the pyramid and women below. There were very subtle things that I perceived, energetic things, that since you don't have any proof or concrete facts, you cannot prove them. But they are things that you feel, because when you have your intuition open, you feel them. A very egotistical environment was felt on the men's side. Men felt like superior beings, because they knew they had the privileges of being the priest of a temple or the leader of a place, the father of the chicks, and the most respected beings of the place. And I began to perceive how there was a whole atmosphere of competition between them to show who contributed more to that religion, to gain more approval points and consequently get to lead. Among women, the competition was more subtle, but there was also a level of competition between them. I cannot say that my time in that place was in vain, because I had great times in very beautiful places where a community atmosphere was breathed in spite of everything. I even stayed for a while in a farm belonging to that religion in Ecuador, where I really liked the experience because I had a very ecological and sustainable life close to nature. One of the contributions that I had when I was in that group was to learn from the sacred books and the Vedas, and that was one of the entrance door for everything I know today. However, over time, I realized that I'm not submissive enough to accept a religion or a guru as an absolute truth, so I decided to take distance myself from them. The truth is, I felt bad. I felt like a lost cause. I really felt like the dark sheep of the flock. When I couldn't understand why many people could accept the dogmas of that religion, and that no matter how hard I tried, I didn't have enough capacity to remain submissive there. And I also felt bad for the fact that I did not enjoy the spiritual practices that they performed, such as chanting the mantra or the fact of worshipping their leader as a god. So for that and for many things, I decided to distance myself. I never really had a mystical experience in that place. A long time later, when I was already distanced from that religion, I lived in a house in the city of São Paulo, where the patio was shared with 3 other houses. One night, suddenly, a feeling of terror and panic began to seize me, and I didn't know why. I felt that somehow I was going to find myself in an unpleasant situation, but I couldn't explain it. When I felt at the worst stage of the panic, where I could not feel more distressed, I decided to invoke with all my heart through the Hare Krishna mantra the presence of that being called Krishna for protection. When I made that invocation from my heart, I was finally able to sleep in peace. And when I was in sleep phase, slowly I began to gain clarity until I made an astral travel, and when I was in the astral plan, I saw a silhouette of a very clear, almost transparent being. It was a being that at first I could not identify if it was a man or a woman, because it seemed to be both at the same time. It seemed like it was made of wind, it was very subtle. In spite of that, I was able to see it, and my heart immediately identified that that being was Krishna. When I connected with the essence of him, I felt a lot of love, happiness, and a lot of peace. It was one of the few astral experiences in my life where I really felt in divine presence of a divine being. His presence called me. The next morning, when I was already calm, a neighbor for God opened the gate of the patio, and a woman entered from the gate. That woman had a disfigured face, and she seems possessed over effect of drugs. And I, outside the patio, saw her. She asked me my phone number, and she asked me a few questions about my private life. Then I realized that that panic attack I had the night before was because I was having a premonition of what was going to happen the next day. But since I was calmer, I was able to deal with the situation in a good manner, and I was able to have enough emotional intelligence to know how to face that danger. What seemed curious to me was to see that I finally got to have a mystical experience with that being that people of Hare Krishna religion worship. Despite all the time I was in that religion with them, that mystical being never really appeared in my life. But when I finally distanced myself from that religion, and when I was simply an ordinary being without any label of any type of religion, that being decided to visit me and give me the gift of his presence. Then I understood that I did not need to follow that religion to have contact with such a special and enlightened being. The connection with spirituality is made through your heart and not through a guru or through a religion, no matter how much they want to convince you otherwise. One day, I was clicking on my cell phone, watching Facebook videos, and a video appeared of a Hare Krishna person reciting the mantra with the yapamala on one hand and watching the cell phone with the other hand. Then I realized that this person was simply performing an automatic activity that she considered to be her spiritual obligation or her spiritual responsibility, which was chanting the Krishna mantra regardless the true connection with the heart. Then I realized the false spirituality. What's the use of a person chanting a mantra hundreds of times in automation mode throughout the day when they are not 100% aware of what they're doing? There's no use chanting this mantra 1,000 times in automatic mode or seeing it as if it were a spiritual obligation. It's preferable to chant this mantra just once in your day, but that only time comes from your heart. That has much more effect than chanting the mantra 1,000 times with false spirituality. A few years ago, I met through YouTube a doctor in journalism called Dr. Files. He's a Chilean journalist, and this man has done a lot of research on the civilizations of the earth. In one of his programs, he investigated about the Vedas and about the civilization where Krishna lived. In his investigations, he discovered that this being, according to the records of the books and the temples, really existed on earth. Krishna existed at the time where there were many changes on a social level. He wanted to undertake a social change where he promoted the rights and the equality between men and women. That fact resonated in my heart immediately because when I felt his presence in the previous experience, I really couldn't tell if it was man or woman. It seemed both genders. In this program, I am referring to Krishna as him with masculine gender because that's how humanity relates it. But this being should not be categorized as male. The purpose of this being on earth was precisely to bring a level of consciousness and enlightenment where we will be able to develop advanced civilizations, where there will be equality of men and women. However, when this being left Earth, a group of power, which in this case is called the Brahmanas, they did not like the idea of revolution, because they were the men who coined absolute power within that society. If they allowed such an extreme change in society, their power could collapse. So they decided to maintain that misogynistic and pyramidal structure where the Brahmin men will be the ones who will reign in that civilization. So they completely misrepresented Krishna's teachings and took him as another god within their misogynistic pantheon, where men reign and women are subjects. At present, this society in India is very curious because at the top of the pyramid are these Brahmin male misogynists, full of power, and at the base of the pyramid are the untouchables, the Harijans, the people who were supposedly born slaves to being able to perform the most difficult task in society. Even to these days in that society, when people of the untouchable caste are born, sometimes they amputate a limb or cut off a hand or make a mark that identifies them for the rest of their lives as Harijans, so that they remain submissive in their position as inferior beings within the pyramid, while Brahmins are supposedly light beings, demigods, who supposedly have direct contact with the gods of the heaven, and they are the people who rule within all that social structure. And the most curious thing is to see so many tourists going to that country every year because they consider it so spiritually evolved. Spiritual evolution will be when that caste of Brahmanas is undone and that they can completely eradicate slavery, and that the caste of the untouchables and the people they consider inferior disappear, when they achieve true equality between people, between men and women, which was precisely Krishna's proposal. Returning to the initial issue, I want to emphasize that when I distanced myself from the Hare Krishna religion, I felt very judged. I felt bad and I felt like the dark sheep in the flock because I was not able to really accept the dogmas that religion imposed, and I could never be submissive enough. I felt myself as a lost cause, as a person who cannot really fit into society, because I was not able to accept my supposed place within the pyramid of that religion. When I saw the thumbnail of that YouTube video, I couldn't believe it, because despite everything, I had a positive image of that guru. So, when I clicked on the video, there was the girl from that channel exposing various shoes that various women have made throughout their lives about the sexual abuse of these men. I fully believe that many of his followers, when they know these scandals, will consider twice if they are in the right place. And many are even going to be disappointed, like when you fall in love with a person and you are disappointed with the person. So here comes my reflection on not idealizing anyone or depending spiritually on anyone. It is clear that throughout our lives we will find people who can help us, who can direct us. Even this is the purpose of my podcast, to help people who are in the same phase I was 15 years ago, when I was so thirsty of information and knowledge. Well, I consider that with everything I have already experienced and lived, I can bring a little light and help people with valuable information. However, we don't have to idealize anyone, nor do you have to idealize me. We are all ordinary human beings. All of us have felt at some point in our lives envy, fear, anger, resentment. The marketing strategy of pretending to be a phenomenal person is very nice, who does not need food to stay alive, because received food directly from the sun, who was born pure, and that the heart is free of sin. In fact, that's what many people seek to follow, a demigod who dictates them what to do and how to behave. Therefore, there are many psychopaths in society who take advantage of it to sell the idea that they are God. But the reality is that even if there are marketing strategies to sell the idea to people that someone is perfect or is a demigod, the truth is we are all ordinary human beings. That is why we cannot idealize absolutely anyone in this world. We live in a dual dimension, where light and shadow, yin and yang, come together to manifest life. The idea is that we can walk on our own feet here on earth, without needing crutches, without needing the approval of a pastor, a priest, a guru, leader, or whatever. Well, these dudes just live off the emotional dependence that others have for them. And with this, I close this episode. Thank you very much for your time and attention. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share it, and subscribe so that this content reaches more people that can benefit from it. See you in the next episode. Bye!